Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Woodstock City Council, September 19th, 2024. This hybrid meeting is being held in person here in council chambers and electronically in accordance with Section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act and Section 16.6.24 of the City of Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. And I do not believe that we have Councillor Tate tonight virtually, but she is not in attendance. First up, we had no closed session. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Any disclosure of new business? Seeing none. Matters arising from the minutes. And now the minutes. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wismer Van Meer that the minutes of the regular meeting of Woodstock City Council held on September 5th, 2024 be adopted.
Thank you. Any questions on those? Seeing none. All those in favor? That is carried. No additions to the agenda that I'm familiar with. No presentations or delegations this evening, but we do have consideration of planning reports. Mr. Gilbert? This is B24-42-8, application for consent.
Thank you. This is a consent application to sever a vacant industrial lot. The properties are zoned M4, which is a transitional industrial zone, which allows for some light industrial uses, typically in proximity to sensitive residential uses. The proposed lots to be severed and retained would meet the provisions of the M4 zone. Development of the future parcel will be subject to site plan control, where matters such as grading, drainage, servicing would be addressed. The lot to be severed does contain overhead hydro easement as well as sanitary sewer easement, which will need to be respected through the development of the site. It's understood that the site does have some environmental contamination. However, there is no requirement to clean that up through the planning process, as the site is still proposed to be used for industrial uses. Should it be developed for institutional or residential uses, then the records recognition would be required as part of the building permit application. Staff recommend the application be supported, subject to the noted conditions in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner? Seeing none. Looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
That Woodstock City Council advised the Oxford County Land Division Committee that it supports consent application B24-24-8 submitted by Sagjit Chadha and Baljit Gorora for lands described as lot 15 West South Birch Street, 16 West Birch Street, Plan 19, Part Block E, Plan 19, Part Lot 13 West South Birch Street, 14 West South Birch Street, Plan 19, Part Birch Street, Plan 19, closed by 328096 and 328097, Part Lot 55C, Plan 261, Part Lot 133C, Plan 293, as in 432544 and 429053, ST 336613, 355219 in the city of Woodstock, subject to the following conditions, which are 1 through 6. Do I need to read all of those? Okay.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Schattenberg. Discussion? Councillor Schattenberg.
Yeah, from the mayor, I just want to sort of comment generally that it's nice to see this vacant property that's been sitting vacant on Main Street for many, many years, to be utilized for some sort of a purpose, and it'll be easier to maintain therefore too, for things like cutting the grass and making it look nicer with both the retained and the new lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Next up, Mr. Gilbert, 9B, B 24-38-8 and A 24-12-8.
This is application for consent and minor variance. The property contains an existing semi-detached dwelling. The applicant proposes to sever the western half of the lot and construct a duplex on the subject property. Minor variances have been sought for the minimum rear yard depth to reduce it from 7.5 meters to 7 meters, to reduce the minimum lot frontage for the duplex from 18 meters to 13.7 meters, reduction to the minimum lot area from 540 square meters to 340 square meters, as well as a reduced setback for the driveway to the street line. Staff of the opinion that the proposed consent and minor variances are appropriate. This area of Victoria Street and Henry Street has a wide variety of dwelling types and densities and varying lot sizes. The proposed driveway for the new dwelling is situated sufficient distance away from the intersection, so there's no expected impacts to sightlines. And the proposed duplex will have the required parking provided with 4 parking spaces. In light of this, staff recommend the application be supported.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner on this application? Seeing none, looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Lauder?
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports application file A 24-12-8 submitted by LaPointe and J.R. LaPointe Limited for lands described as part lot 23, Plan 212, as in 425886, City of Woodstock and municipally known as 566 Henry Street, as it relates to, and there's eight sections by the look of it. Oh, I guess it's 5 sections there, and I won't bother reading those. You want? Yeah. Do you want me to read? Okay, thank you.
Do I have a seconder on the motion? Councillor Leatherborough? Discussion? Seeing none, I'd just like to say again, I appreciate us infilling everywhere we can if this is possible, and another scenario where we're trying to maximize land here in the city of Woodstock. Councillor Martin?
My apologies, Mayor Atchison, I should have asked this before your comment. I was thinking about this on Monday night. Do we have a sense of how many of these type of planning approvals we've approved in the last 2 years of adding a second, dividing a property and adding a second? It feels like there's been a dozen or more.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't, but I can bring that information back to
I'd just
future
be
council
curious.
meeting.
Okay, anyone else? Yeah, call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Next up, 9C, ZN 8-24-11, application for zone change. Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you. This is a zone change application to allow for the establishment of a additional eating establishment on the subject property. The property is designated service commercial and zoned special C4 zone, which provides provisions for the hotel building under construction for increased height and reduced setbacks for the hotel from the front yard depth. This zone change seeks to reduce the parking requirements for the hotel from 1.2 spaces per room to 1 space per room, as well as reduce the parking required for the eating establishments from 1 per 10 square meters of space to 10.7 meters of space, and also to reduce the number of drive-through spaces from 13 to 11. The applicant has modified the plan as compared to the previous meeting. They've moved the garbage area to the underground Moloch containers. So they provide an additional 5 spaces in that location. And they've redimensioned some of the spaces on the southern limit. They've also provided a parking justification study that looked at other hotel sites in the area that aren't served by high order transit, that concluded that the parking rates for this site would be similar to the parking demand experienced at these other sites throughout the region. Staff note that if there's going to be any parking issues on the site, it will be largely contained to this site because there is no on-street parking on Dundas or Oxford Road 4. So essentially, it'll be the applicant's own problem to solve, as they also own the site to the east containing the Tim Hortons and the Esso Gas Bar. The two sites can provide overflow parking for each other at peak times if required. However, the relief granted would be just for the westerly site containing the hotel, and the 2 restaurants. Staff recommend the application be approved.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner on this application? Councillor Shanberg.
Yeah, from the mayor through to Mr. Gilbert. I guess my question is, when it comes to parking, and I know the parking was discussed on Monday, there's always limitations as to how many based on the number of people going to be on the lot for AODA compliance and handicap parking spots. Do they have the same kind of provisions in place for electric car parking spots, whether it be somebody staying overnight at a hotel or just stopping into a restaurant for 90 minutes?
Through Mr. Mayor, to the councilor's question, the zoning by law, we don't have any requirements for EV parking or EV charging stations. So it's solely left to the proprietors of the establishment, how many that they wish to offer to attract guests, but there's no city requirement for a minimum number of spaces.
So long-term, it's a demand thing where they could start with 4 and then you come back 3 years later and suddenly there's 10 or 12 of them there, the special parking spots.
Correct. The only thing that the additional parking spaces may warrant a site plan review, just for the additional charging infrastructure, but otherwise it would be permitted and they'd be able to replace existing parking spaces with EV ones.
Thank you. And for those watching on Monday night, there was 4 spots in the plans right now for this location. Anyone else? Seeing none. Okay. Look for a motion on the floor. Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approve the application for zone change for lands described as Lot 8 and Part Lot 9, Plan 1626 in the city of Woodstock to amend the C4-35 zone to permit a 5-story hotel and 2 eating establishments with reduced parking standards. And further, that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion? Or questions to further staff? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. And I was asked, I got a message yesterday, it is not a Taco Bell going in there. That's all I'll say. It's not a Taco Bell. Consideration of correspondence. 10A, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. That Woodstock City Council supports the call of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, Rural Ontario Municipal Association, ROMA, Ontario Municipal Administrators Association, OMA, Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, AMCT, CTO, and more than 207 municipalities for the Government of Ontario to introduce legislation to strengthen municipal codes of conduct and compliance with them in consultation with municipal governments. And further, that this legislation encompasses updated municipal codes of conduct to account for workplace safety and harassment, creating a flexible administrative penalty regime adapted to the local economic and financial circumstances of municipalities across Ontario, increasing training of municipal integrity commissioners to enhance consistency of investigations and recommendations across the province, amending the Municipal Act 2001 to require for the establishment of a Board of Integrity Commissioners, amending both the Municipal Act 2001 and the City of Toronto Act 2006 to allow a commissioner of a Board of Integrity Commissioners to make an application for judicial review to vacate a member's seat and impose prescribed penalties if the commissioner is of the opinion that the member has made certain contraventions of the Code of Conduct. Adding provisions to both acts to allow the commissioner to seek confirmation of certain determinations from a judge of the Superior Court, introducing provisions to prohibit a member who has been removed from office from running in the election for the remainder of the term and the subsequent term. And further, that this resolution be circulated to the City of Brantford, the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Paul Calandra, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honourable Doug Downey, Attorney General, the Honourable Charmaine Williams, Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunity, the Honourable Ernie Hardeman, Oxford MPP, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on the motion? Councillor Leatherborough? Discussion? Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I brought this correspondence forward and I suspect that it's going to be reviewed by hundreds of different municipalities across Ontario. It came to us from the City of Brantford, but this has a long history behind it of municipalities asking the province to create this legislation. Repeatedly, we heard stories at AMO of municipalities that are still continuing to struggle, and there is no mechanism to address the bad behavior of a handful of elected officials. Minister Paul Calandra indicated that the province is looking at this. He indicated this, sorry, during the Bear Pit at AMO, and that they are referring it to the Ontario Integrity Commissioner, Commissioner Wake. But unfortunately, he has announced that he is set to retire at the end of 2024. And so a push to have this legislation move forward, have this review taken seriously and move forward and into legislation prior to the commissioner's retirement. Otherwise, we fear that that just creates another delay in this process. So I thank my peers who have advocated on behalf of this legislation over and over and over again. And I hope that we can support it here at the City of Woodstock, encouraging this action to be taken.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Leatherborough?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will just say that it is concerning as well as surprising that it's taking a long time for this legislation to be finalized. But further to that, just echoing Councillor Martin's thoughts, as well as adding in that it does have an impact on future leaders or people that are interested in this job. I think what we see online or in the Legislative Assembly or further up in on Parliament Hill can be not great behavior at the best of times. So I think having some type of, I'll use your word, mechanism, as we would in any work environment or in our schools, in our homes, in our educational systems, I think that it's a very easy ask, and I hope that it comes back to us sooner rather than later. And just making mention that it's very critical for future leaders to want to get involved in this position and setting the right example.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll just add that thanks to the City of Brantford for putting this together. I certainly support it. It's been talked about multiple times over the years through AMO. There's having a stronger code of conduct is a good thing, keeping everyone accountable, keeping transparent, keeping just the whole system stronger is a good thing. So certainly support this myself, and will continue to advocate for everyone. Councillor Schanberg?
Yeah, from the mayor through to the CAO, not to put you on the spot, Mr. Curry, but I guess the question would be that there's a long distance between suspending somebody that might be on council for whatever reason, or actually taking their seat or their position away from them. At what point in time would this legislation be able to be put into effect to be able to sort of take someone's seat away from them if it had got to be to that point?
Your worship, through to Councillor Schadenberg, I think there's a lot of distance between this motion and whatever legislation would come forward in terms of amendments to the municipal act or other regulations and acts to be able to answer that question. So my apologies.
Fair enough, yep.
Anyone else? Before I call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Now 10B, Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council supports the provincial and federal government calls to action outlined in the report from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Homeless Encampments in Ontario, a municipal preserve perspective, and further that the resolution of support and the AMO report be circulated to the Honorable Ernie Hardeman, Oxford MPP, and the Honorable Arpan Khan, Oxford MP.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion? Councillor Lauder?
Thank you. As the report indicates, while municipalities do not create the homeless crisis, they are being forced to manage it without resources or tools to sufficiently respond. It is municipalities' responsibility to ensure our communities are safe and vibrant places for all residents. Municipalities throughout Ontario require or resolve to meet the obligations under the Charter and the Ontario Human Rights Code, together with health, safety, and well-being of our communities. It cannot be done on the backs of our citizens. This request is to support AMO in their quest to lobby both the provincial and federal governments for their leadership in addressing the homeless crisis issue sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Just a comment, earlier this week, our mayor's task force had a meeting, and a large portion of that meeting, again, was around encampments within not only the city. We were kind of talking a bit about what was happening in Oxford County as well, but the executive director of Operation Sharing, Tim Dukes, was there and shared some information. So I just asked if he could send me some of that information again to share with folks. Since June of 2024, they've received 37 requests to access services. 14 of those requests are individuals born before 1970. They're seeing the age of folks that are coming into the shelter increasing, almost 50% of 60 years and older. That's increased that much. So it's not just young folks who are suffering from addiction or mental health or substance abuse. This is people that are losing their homes for a number of reasons. He also shared this, reported today. Since 2021, the by name list has added 332 unique individuals, housed 77, and currently have 117 active names. Some individuals have been removed from our list or changed to inactive due to lack of communications or moving. Since 2021, 77 housed puts us at an average of 19.25 individuals per year. It will take us 6.5 years to house the entire list, and that is with no new additions. This list does not include all active homeless or living poor. The actual number in need is much higher. So with the rising age experiencing homelessness, he is strongly suggesting that the senior RGI policies also move to 60 years of age as opposed to 65. So I just think those are numbers and stats that people need to hear because we need help from higher levels of government, because this is getting absolutely out of control, and this is a crisis that is getting bigger and worse as the months and the weeks go by, and seniors are now losing their homes and ending up on streets, shelters, hopefully, but it's not the stigma and the label I think that people want to put on it over and over again. So I think something like this coming from AMO It's a really well put together report. I hope folks will read it in the agenda. Starts on page 88 to have a look at it, but we have to start pushing harder and harder to these upper levels of government because these numbers are staggering, and that's for Woodstock and Oxford County.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. It's a pandemic level. There's no two ways about it. Something needs to be done. And we are just not equipped as municipalities on our own, so. Anyone else? Sorry. Any other comments or questions? Well, I'll just say thank you, Councillor Lauder, for bringing this forward, and encourage those at home to pull up page 88. It does start. It is a great document. Take a look at all the different examples, I guess, they state, and judge yourself how you think we fit in that, because it's kind of scary when you look at the ages and everything else now. Final chance, anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Okay, no staff presentations tonight, no mayor's report or councillor reports, but we do have some department reports. 14A, Administrative Services. 14A1, Sale Proceeds of the former Small Business Center, 453 Dundas Street. Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council direct the proceeds from the sale of the former Small Business Center building at 453 Dundas Street to option 1 West End Market Center renovation.
Thank you. I have a seconder, Councillor Lauder. Discussion? Councillor Leatherborough.
Through you, your worship, I will just mention that there were a couple options of where to move this money to, projects, reserves, things like that. I just thought it made sense that the 900,000 for the Market Center building, I believe the debenture was issued, so it makes sense that it's top of the list. So that's why I thought to go with option number 1.
Councillor Lauder, want to speak to that?
Yes, I agree with everything that Councillor Leatherborough has said, and that was my, when I looked at some of these 4 options, this seemed to be the best, and it cuts down our upfront cost on that project and reduces debt reduction is accomplished through this. So I think this is a great idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Schattenberg.
Thanks, maybe just a comment. I'd like to congratulate and thank Diane Campbell, our Director of Administrative Services, for putting together a report that does include 4 options to be able to sort of sift through them and ask questions about this, that, and the next thing, right? So I agree that option 1 is the best way to go. And I like the cohesive idea that the economic development, the BIA, and the small business center are basically all under one roof now. And there's others there, well, bylaw, human resources, a few others, but it's the economic development angle and the BIA being all together that I really like the idea that they are in the sort of in the same office. So I think that's terrific. And because the small business center is the one that was moving into the market theater, to meld those 2 numbers together only makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Well, since we're talking about the Market Center, of course, make sure you drive by because all the signage got put up today and it looks fantastic. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Diane and staff, for putting this together as well. Next up, we are talking budget now, 14A.2, looking for dates for budget 2025. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. That Woodstock City Council, moved by myself, that Woodstock City Council approve the budget meeting dates as presented in this report.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Schattenberg. Discussion? Seeing none, I don't have it here in front of me, but I believe November 21st is the first night, just for those watching at home. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so stay tuned and please, we've always got lots of seats available and you can see what's going on here in the city. And with that, any other final comments or questions? All those in favor? That is carried. Nothing from engineering, cultural services, parks and rec, but we do have economic development tonight. 14E.1, opportunities for increasing childcare spaces in Woodstock. Councillor Leatherborough.
There we go. Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council direct staff at the Small Business Center to develop programming in conjunction with Oxford County Human Services. And, pardon me, I'm looking at two sheets. Let me just try that again. Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council direct staff at the Small Business Center to develop programming in conjunction with Oxford County Human Services aimed at increasing the number of home-based childcare businesses in Oxford County. And further, that financial incentives for home-based childcare and licensed childcare centers be added to the city's community improvement plan and referred to budget for consideration. And further, that City Council requests that the County of Oxford amend its community improvement plan to match childcare incentives offered by lower tier municipalities. And further, that all non-industrial city land dispositions provide positive consideration for proposals, which include childcare space. And further, that city staff consider opportunities for new childcare space when expanding existing municipal buildings or designing new municipal buildings where appropriate. And further, that council directs staff in the Economic Development Department to create programming to encourage residential and commercial developers, as well as large employers to consider incorporating childcare spaces into new developments. And further, that city council directs staff to prepare a policy that requires that all non-industrial city land dispositions provide positive consideration for proposals, which include childcare space, and that requires city staff to consider opportunities for new childcare space when expanding existing municipal buildings or designing new municipal buildings where appropriate. And further, that this resolution and corresponding staff report be circulated to Oxford County Council, the Honorable Ernie Hardeman, Oxford MPP, the Honorable Arpan Kahan, Oxford MP, and the Honorable Jill Dunlop, Minister of Education.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder on that? Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Discussion, Councillor Leatherborough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll actually just volley it over to Mr. Hammond. He wrote a very thorough and in-depth report, so I would just ask him to provide a summary, please.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it was, my apologies. It was certainly a much longer report than I'm used to writing, but given the complexity of the topic, it was difficult to do it any justice without addressing all of the background that's involved. So in that light, I'll try to keep my comments as short as possible as well, but perhaps no promises. So generally, the approach I took was that I took a kind of a broad-based look across the province at what other municipalities in Ontario had done to increase the number of childcare spaces in the community and what they've been doing. And it was a little bit complicated by the fact that a lot of the examples I found, or at least a number of them, were from single-tier communities. So places like the City of London that don't have the same structure as we do in the county with the county level and the municipal level. And really the only reason that complicated it was on some of those single-tier websites, they talked about that the City of X provides capital grants to businesses and childcare centers and whatnot. And in reality, what that means is, much like the County of Oxford, they're simply flowing through money from the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Plan to the operators. So there's a bit of sifting involved, but it's essentially what I tried to do was look at all of those activities and divide them into two baskets. Those things that are already going well in Woodstock and Oxford County and really are not a barrier to additional childcare spaces. And on the other hand, those things where we could maybe add to it or augment what's going well already. So it was a very complicated topic in that there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of influences and legislations and considerations. So, you know, all of those things were at play at the same time. So, for example, the responsibility of childcare, the legislative responsibility, or the responsibility that's been provided by the province. In our case, it's the County of Oxford. They're what's termed the system service manager here in Oxford, meaning they're responsible for planning, administering, and funding licensed childcare in the county. Legislative requirements was another big issue. We heard about that in June from the delegations, in that for licensed childcare center, you need 30 square feet per child of unobstructed space inside, 60 square feet outside, and on top of that, you need space for office, staff rooms, laundry, food prep, and so forth. and that the magic number for kind of economic viability of a childcare center is about 88 or 90 children in the center to really make it financially viable or make a business case for it. So when you combine that number with the requirements, you're really talking about a 65 square foot commercial building with additional green space outside. And being a smaller market, there's very little of that vacant and available. I would say none really for practical purposes. So that's a barrier. I don't think it's unique to Woodstock. I think it's unique to many other communities of our size and perhaps even bigger, that there's a lot of requirements that are placed on that type of space. Also, there's the difference between licensed and unlicensed childcare. So that doesn't refer to the city's licensing. We hope every business has a city's municipal business license, but the provincial licensing. And it provides an additional onus on a home-based childcare operator if they're licensed in terms of inspections and whatnot. And as you might expect, not everyone's up for that. So as a result, we currently have about 30 licensed home-based childcare centers in the city. And I had said an unknown number of unlicensed simply because the city's business licensing system's not currently set up to kind of query licenses that way to break it down. We could do that in the future, but there's that. And then on top of all of that, you still have the municipal requirements that we look after: building code, fire code, record of site condition, which is provincial legislation that we're charged with enforcing. So there's a lot at play, whether it's a childcare center or licensed home-based childcare as well. There are 4 areas of agreement, I would say, and that's that not having reliable childcare is a barrier to a parent returning to work after having a child. So after 18 months, once the maternity leave's over and the parental leave's over, if you don't have childcare, you can't leave your kid alone. So you can't return to work. And then on top of that, there's also the cost of unlicensed childcare, $200 a week or more. And that leads some parents to simply say, I'm going to withdraw from the labor market for the next 5 years till my children are in school. I should never say kids. My mother always said that. But that's a fact. And likewise, not having reliable childcare is a significant cause of absenteeism. So if the childcare provider is ill or something like that comes up again, without childcare, people opt to take a sick day or a personal day or something like that. Another area, the demand is high for licensed childcare. So we heard the figure of 2,600 people on a waiting list in Oxford County. That should be tempered by the fact that not all of those children are without childcare. They might be in unlicensed childcare. And some of those children or their parents are still on maternity leave or perhaps not even born yet. But the need is high regardless. And finally, and not surprisingly, most parents would prefer the reduced fee childcare, the so-called $10 per child childcare that's expected to be fully in place in January 1st, 2026. That's a savings of $200 a week per child, $10,000 per year. So it's significant, and no doubt why every parent would want to tap into that. The best practices in Oxford are those things going well, collaboration with school boards. That's a requirement of the province. So the school boards have to cooperate with childcare providers in providing space when it's available or when they're doing an addition. We've got 2 in Woodstock already. There's 2 more expected to be within the next year or so. I think one was announced on the north end of the city just recently, this new school being built up there. Streamlined planning process. Again, our planning process really runs very smoothly. Our zoning bylaw is very broad. You can fit childcare into almost every zone one way or another. Some of the zones like industrial, there are restrictions, but you still could have a childcare center on an industrial site under certain terms. Likewise, we did a housekeeping bylaw recently to address barriers that were there. So we amended our parking bylaws to remove the need for 2 cars parking side by side. I'm not sure what the term of that is, but I'll call it side by side because that was a barrier for homes that had a driveway where cars would park one behind another. We increased the number of children allowed in a home-based childcare from 5 to 6 to match the provincial maximum. So really our zoning policies are about as good as they could really be. And zone changes, if once required again, take place very quickly in Woodstock compared to many other communities if they're done well. Expedited municipal business licensing, again, I think our standard of service is about 21 days when someone applies. Typically, I'm told we're delivering licenses back to people within 14 days, so we're ahead of schedule on that. And training and professional development, that's already being provided by the County of Oxford staff as well as their partners like on Oxford Community Childcare and so forth. So all of those best practices are working well in Oxford, and they're not a barrier to developing more childcare spaces. So that led to me to my suggestions. I called them kind of 7 practical options for Woodstock to consider. I say practical because they're things that are actually within our control, where if we choose, we can provide some influence. Some of these things, some of the suggestions are really at no or little cost to the city. Things like the small business support for home-based childcare. Our staff in the Small Business Center already provide advice and counseling to people looking to start a small business. They're experts in that, and they do that well. And if they were to partner with Oxford Community Childcare and Oxford County, they would fill out the other side of the expertise to provide good information in terms of what's involved in starting a home-based childcare, whether it's licensed or not, and the benefits and the considerations at play. So that really could be resourced with current resources. Incentive-based support for childcare programs and municipal rebate fees. That would be lumped together under a community improvement plan. So I'd encourage council to think of a community improvement plan like a toolbox with lots of tools in it. And you don't always use all of the tools that are in there all the time. I know I had this question today, so I might as well face it head on. If council were to adopt that recommendation tonight, it would really be the first step in implementing it. So it would be added to the city's community improvement plan through the amendment we're doing, but it would still only be a list of an option we could consider. It doesn't actually become a program until A, we create guidelines for it that lay out the terms and the eligibility, and B, council decides to provide funding to that reserve through the budget process. So approving it as part of the CIP tonight was really just kind of the first step, and council would still have a couple of additional steps where they could consider it. And if they were to consider, what's the right or the correct level of support rather. Another one was the disposition of municipal real estate. We recently sold 16 Graham Street. Through that request for proposal or RFP, we said our desire was we'd like to see residential development in the downtown, and that's how we evaluated those proposals. So, again, we can do that anytime that we're selling real estate, whether it's through a council policy or whether it's just kind of a case-by-case type thing. When we deal with properties, we can decide what our desires are there and decide to weight the responses we get accordingly. Utilizing public spaces. So the example there would be a new arena or a new library. Council could choose again to consider whether it's appropriate to put a child care center in that type of spot, not to be the operator, but to rent it to a third party to actually operate it. And again, as I'd mentioned in my report, if council's considering that, it would be wise to have an agreement with the operator already lined up and know that the space would be leased and would be used. And there's a lot more detail that could come there. And again, maybe the last 2 recommendations are perhaps a little less likely, but possibilities. Engaging with employers to provide on-site childcare. It's not an unheard of practice, particularly for technology companies and so forth. It's seen as a benefit for employees, and reduces employee stress and absenteeism. So again, that would be more like preparing the information to share with employers, and making sure that they understand what the possibilities are, what the benefits might be, and what the requirements on them would be. Likewise, partnering with commercial developers and residential developers, the same thing. That would be very much developing an information package and meeting with them and just saying, have you considered the possibility of, and this is what it could look like, and these are what the options of the benefits might be for you. So I think I've talked for almost as long as my whole report was written. So I'll stop there for now. Those recommendations made their way into the motion on council. So I'll stop and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
First, just a comment, and again, thank you to Councillor Leatherbarrow for bringing this forward. I sat on a board of directors for Good Beginnings for about 4 or 5 years, and that was 7+ years ago, I think. And it was a situation we were dealing with then, and I know that those numbers have only gotten much larger in that time. And speaking with folks, I know that are part of that organization still, their wait lists are just never ending. So again, thank you, Councillor Leatherbarrow, for bringing this forward and moving this ball forward. I want to say, I was going to call you Mr. Mahar. A question to
Nope,
Mr.
we wait for
Hammond.
dinner.
Do we know where the other school might be? I know you referenced the north end. Do we know where the other school might be, or is it just we know it's coming to be
I
determined?
believe it's a Saint, but I can't remember whether it's a Mike's or Pat's, one of the schools.
I think you might be right. I think it's St. Mike's. It might be, yeah.
Yeah, so I believe they have school edition coming up and it would be like incorporated into that.
Anyone else? Counselor Leatherborough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't know if council members had questions for Mr. Hammond, so I wanted to kind of allow that first. But again, thank you to Brad for this thorough report. I am certainly, I like this flavor, long reports, and I do love when staff take a moment to explain what they've found and share that with myself and then community, obviously. So I'm happy to hold up space, but I just wanted to really identify, you know, everything that Brad has said. Thank you again, but also within the report, the most stark piece of it is that at present, Oxford County has the lowest number of licensed childcare spots in the province, measured on spaces per capita of childcare age citizens, or greater need than anywhere else in Ontario. And within this report, it obviously identifies that there is an expected 40% population growth in the next 20 years. And so that's why I really wanted to identify if there was a way to create a policy. I think that that is exactly our job description, to create good, sound public policy. And back to that 20-year projection, I will be the sharp age of 53 at that time. So I may not be around this horseshoe, but I do think of not only stimulating your local economy, but for all of the families that may become empty nesters or people continuing to call Woodstock their home, who wouldn't want their family circle to stay close? And if we don't have the services, just like infrastructure, childcare is critical because the cost of living is so skyrocketed that even the people that are both actively working or two incomes coming in, it's hard to make ends meet. So I think that a policy can be sound for tomorrow and it can be beneficial for the future. So that is why I added the amendment of looking at a policy direction. I have full faith in the Economic Development Department, but just really looking to the future, because this is unfortunately on the list of things that could get much worse in the coming years. And yeah, I think I will leave it there. I'm just really happy with what Brad has put together because he really did his due diligence. And I did meet with the 3 delegates yesterday to kind of go over this. And I think this is just one step. This is going to be a long game, certainly working with the Oxford County Council or Oxford County in general, because area municipalities are seeing this across the region. And it's really important that we do the best we can for tomorrow and the future.
Thank you. Counselor Lauder.
Thank you, Brad, for this in-depth report. I do have some questions or some concerns, I guess, because you have answered a lot of my questions. I see that there is financial in this for the city liability, and I'm concerned about if we go with the community improvement plan that's referred to consideration in our budget. I know that it is financial. It will come to us in the budget, and yes, we can say yes or no to it. But that is a concern. And then it does say that we ask the county to also comply the same as what we would do. We also pay 40% of the county, so we're really, it's two things, we're paying both ways here. And further, the council directs staff in Economic Development Department to create programming to encourage residential commercial developers as well as large employers to consider incorporating childcare space into new developments. Could that cause a business maybe to go elsewhere if we have policies in place that we want that type of thing here in our city?
Sure, Your Worship, through to Councillor Lauder. That's a very fair question, so thanks for asking it. I think under those items, in terms of encouraging employers to look at on-site childcare or developers to consider childcare as part of their subdivision or their commercial plaza. You know, my thoughts really were that it would be just a recommendation that we provide the information to them. You know, they've got their property rights. It's up to them what they do with their property. And if they're not interested in having a childcare center in their subdivision, that's totally fine. It would be up to them, and same for the commercial developments as well. So no, I wouldn't advocate for making it a requirement in that way, that a take it or leave it type thing. But simply kind of the soft sell where, you know, they have you thought about, and here's what it could look like, and here's what the benefits could be to you for marketing your subdivision or what have you.
When we, let's say we're building an arena and we had to add on for childcare, it is an expense. It would be an added expense to add on X number of square feet or for a childcare center, and then double that green space or play area for outdoors. So again, I see added expense there. So when this is, the monies go to the county as opposed to coming to us, that's where I do have a concern. And this is subsidized daycare, which I think is wonderful for parents that there is subsidized daycare. But I'd like to see it at the county level where the funding comes from the federal government. And we can change, as you have said, that we have changed a lot of our zoning to accommodate this. So I will not be supporting this at this time. And could I have a recorded vote, please?
Okay. Counselor Martin, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I think that this report outlines a number of opportunities for us, a number of different pathways. I like that it gives us the opportunity to work in concert with community and with the two different levels of government to accomplish our common goals. And as Councillor Leatherborough said, to get ahead of this before it gets worse. I think that taking action now is a little bit more preventative and upstream work rather than being responsive to a bigger crisis 20 or 30 years down the road that could in fact be quite a bit more expensive at that time. A year and a half ago, we updated our strategic plan, and right in that plan, we indicated a vision of Woodstock being a safe, inclusive, and caring community, that we want to enhance the quality of life for our residents and provide a safe and well community for all, effectively delivering amenities and services. And so we've very clearly identified that this is our collective vision. And so taking these actions today, providing childcare is an essential part of a thriving economy and allowing parents to contribute back to their community here in the city of Woodstock. And so my full support to this motion and my appreciation for an incredibly well-written report that answered all of my questions before coming to the meeting tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Schadenberg.
I guess my comment would be along the lines of just thinking by creating such a policy that's fairly strongly worded would be to sort of suggest that if the city of Woodstock was expanding any kind of a municipal facility or building a brand new municipal facility, we would be required to include a daycare component there. I like the idea that say it's brand new schools coming up and there's a daycare there. But the flip side of that immediately is as soon as the student capacity reaches, let's say the new school on Knights Lane, for example, if it reaches a student capacity of 1,000, then all of a sudden they say, boy, we don't have any room for any more classrooms unless we close down the daycare, which of course they wouldn't do because it's run by a third party establishment. And it wouldn't make sense statistically or any sense to close that down. But all of a sudden you look at the layout of the facility, doesn't matter if it's the YMCA locally or if it's a school, to sort of think, well, the city of Woodstock would be required to sort of template in, for example, at Cowan Fields or something, if we're building more buildings out there, that they must be required to add 5,000 for square feet for a daycare center, plus say another 10,000 square feet for outdoor playground area.
Thank you. Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
Just two things. First, to comment, I don't think that, I'm going to disagree with what Councillor Lauder and Councillor Schadenberg are saying. It's not dictating that this has to be done. It's that it's considered opportunities for new childcare. It's not saying while we're building new municipality or new infrastructure, we have to do this. It's saying that it's considered in the opportunities. So I think, I think that we have to, look at this with that lens. Nothing's being dictated, in my opinion, when you're reading this. Another question for Mr. Hammond. In a case where if we are putting, we're considering childcare space within something like a new arena or a new community complex, that wouldn't be a city-run facility necessarily where we are renting out the space. So, there's costs, there's income coming in from those renting it, that space that's being used for childcare, correct? Or
Yeah.
could be an option?
Your worship, through the question. Yeah, exactly. I think, even within the schools, it's not the school board running the daycare. They've leased it, to a third party to be the operator of the childcare. And I think, if it were in a municipal facility, we'd be looking to do the same thing. Lease it based on some kind of cost recovery. And, there's all sorts of permeations that could play out there, whether it's at market rate or whether it's slightly below market rate to do some good in the community, whether the operator actually partners with the city and has capital they can provide to contribute toward the construction of the space in exchange for reduced rate lease over a longer term. And, as is the case in the private sector for commercial, the longer a lease that someone can sign, typically the better the lease rate, because there's that guaranteed income to pay down the capital costs and cover the maintenance and operating costs and so forth. So yeah, I definitely would not advocate for the city being the operator. That's not our business. And there's other people that I'm sure would do it far better than us. But it would simply be building space for someone to lease. And as I'd mentioned in my comments, it would be wise to have all of that sewn up before a shovel broke the ground.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Leatherborough.
My, through your worship, my final comment would just be that I'm absolutely shocked that this is the feedback I'm getting from Councillor Lauder and Councillor Schadenberg. Try not to take it deeply personal, but we had those delegates in June. There is no dollar figure attached to this. And the fact that the County of Oxford is going through a 5-year childcare and early year plan, it's to run parallel. There's other area municipalities in Oxford County that are having these same questions, and maybe they're from the newer elected officials, I'm not sure. But I would have hoped that this could have been looked at as a positive, that one of our staff members wrote a thorough report to say that there is a role to play. And at that time, like whether it's the policy, whether it's, one of these childcare operators has $1 million in a reserve that they can contribute to a rec facility, maybe that's the contribution, and then council votes on that one step at a time. But certainly very shocked and disappointed to hear those comments around this, I think, well thought out report and resolution, and policy is in our job description. So hopefully we can keep that in mind going forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Schadenberg.
Just as a report, even the motion states, Oxford County Human Services is sort of tagged with the responsibility of working in this area, whether it be subsidized dental, subsidized housing over your head, or even in this case, subsidized daycare. I don't think we should be in competition with them or the YMCA, or in competition with any other sort of co-op that doesn't even exist today, that might formulate amongst themselves to sort of say, okay, we can put together 100 kids and start our own co-op daycare center. Well, I don't think the city of Woodstock should be heavily subsidizing somebody therefore with a brand new 5,000 square foot, whatever, shell of a building for them to be able to sort of go in and fix it up at a greatly subsidized rental rate, because the idea at the end of the day is to try to see if you can come up with some sort of $10 daycare while you're still giving the employees, the ECE employees, a living wage.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well then, I'd like to add a couple of things. I want to thank Councillor Leatherborough for bringing this forward. I think been doing a great job championing this. I think it's a very worthy cause, certainly is. Up to this afternoon, I was fully supportive of it. I share a little bit of concerns, as Councillor Schoenberg just mentioned, about the amendment to the policy wording itself. So I got a question through to Mr. Hammond. Does this add any barriers, in your opinion, to any new businesses or even the city of trying to attract or retain any new businesses to the city of Woodstock with this kind of policy, the way it be amended, in your opinion?
Yeah, Your Worship, through the questions, as I understood the motion put forward, the policies were really related more to city-owned properties. So utilization of city space or a new arena or so forth, or if we're disposing of properties. So I guess I would say no, certainly for our own facilities. We're masters of our own domain. In terms of it being a requirement for RFPs when we're disposing of property, it does become a bit of an art in terms of how much weight you would put on to, you know, if someone's going to offer double the amount of money for a property, but they don't have childcare, but it ticks a lot of other boxes. The other one's financially much less desirable, but does provide childcare. I don't think we want to handcuff ourselves to that level. I think that could be nuanced into the policy or the guidelines perhaps. But the city does want to keep a bit of flexibility when it comes to evaluating who we sell the property on to, or rather, in terms of how it meets our criteria and which criteria we value more than others.
So I suppose and that's what I assumed it would be. I just want to make sure that, make sure I'm clear that council of the day, no matter moving forward, if a policy is put in place, we'll just use that as a weight, not necessarily as the determining factor. Though I recognize the need, there's no question, love the idea of getting as much as we can here in the city. Again, I just a little fearful, especially when we have our two-tier system and, we have people always fighting for the same dollars. Doesn't matter if it's new pools or childcare. It doesn't matter where that money's gonna go. So when we're talking city resources that are not legislative to us, of course, I am concerned and don't want to tie us to huge expense. If it's a toolbox in a CIP that it's appropriate, I'll fully support that at that time. So in saying that, as long as that's clear in a future council and we'll get to vote on it, then I will certainly support this motion as amended, because again, the need is there, the need is huge, and we do have to do our part. So thank you. Any other final comments before Councillor Leatherborough?
Through your worship to Mr. Hammond, I'm just confused with, you're saying future councils would vote on it. My understanding of the process is that if this was approved, Brad would take away the loosely written policy. It would come back, council would either make amendments, not approve it, and then from there it would be implemented, and then future councils could obviously do away with it if that was their choice. Is that the right next steps, if you will, Mr. Hammond?
Your Worship, yeah, not trying to avoid the question. That sounds more like a clerk type question in terms of things. But I think, legislation council adopts, other councils can rescind it. I think even with council policies in the past, I've seen motions where that council's been asked to set aside its policy on certain things. For example, appraisals on land sales, for example. I think we've asked that to be set aside. If I've got this wrong, I sure hope the CAO or the clerk will step in and set the record straight, but, yeah.
I don't see any objections, and that's the way I would understand it as well. I'm sorry? No. Question through the CAO?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Leatherborough, yes, it's my understanding that if this motion passes, Mr. Hammond will go away and he will craft a specific community improvement program with guidelines and eligibility to come back to council for specific approval of that, along with some other outstanding programs under the community improvement plan, such as physician recruitment related. So these have been outstanding for some time. This would be an amendment to the community improvement plan, which has historically only focused on the downtown of Woodstock. We would make a change to that plan to make it applicable to the entire geography of the city, so somebody can apply anywhere within the city limits. As with all community improvement program plans, they are subject to only being promoted if there's funding available for those programs. And so that's where the budget piece comes into play. So council would have to provide a budget through the regular budget process or through some special motion of council in order to fund that program. In addition, Mr. Hammond would go away and come back to council with a specific council policy that that speaks to that aspect of the motion about our disposition of property. And so then that would form part, if approved by council formally, that forms part of council's list of council policies, and it survives until it's amended or rescinded.
So just to follow up then, Mr. Mayor, you're saying that you were fine with it until this afternoon, which then the amendment came. So just to be clear, what the amendment says has nothing to do with the CIP program. So you were already comfortable with that. And it actually says, and further that city council directs staff, I'm not targeting you, but just for clarity, and further that city council directs staff to prepare a policy that requires that all non-industrial city land dispositions provide positive consideration for proposals which include childcare space, and that requires city staff to consider opportunities for new childcare space when expanding existing municipal buildings or designing new municipal buildings where appropriate, and then forward on to the powers that be. So I'm just very confused how that is what I'm interpreting as a daunting step about the policy when it's really just, I'll use the word that came up in mind was enshrining, just trying to look at opportunities when they present themselves. So I'm just losing my understanding of why this is something that yourself or other members are so questioning or uncomfortable with when it doesn't have to do with money.
Well, I guess that is my exact concern, what the levy implications are going to be or could be in the future. Anytime we write a policy, it's kind of future directions for any council to try to abide by that, and that is my exact concern. That's it. Again, to be clear, I support the motion. It was just that added line of putting a policy in place, I had questions, and that's why I asked quite pointedly that, does it add a barrier to the disposition of future land? So if that's just a weight that we give it, that's fine, as long as it's not just a requirement, because I don't want to see us turn down more money, but it doesn't have a daycare element to it, and that's not fair to the taxpayer. So that's all. That makes sense? Is that okay? Anyone else before I call the vote? Well, Councillor Lauder.
Just one clarification on the community improvement plan. Did I get this correct? This is through the mayor to Mr. Creary, that this community improvement plan would encompass the whole city, like this, not just the downtown area?
Your worship, through to Councillor Lauder, yes, to be of most benefit to the entirety of the city, we would have to approve a plan that has a geographical impact beyond just the downtown. Historically, that's the only location where community improvement plans have been offered. But council has standing direction with respect to programs for physician recruitment to support new physicians coming into the community in the establishment of their practices. We cannot just limit that geographically to the downtown and have the impact that we're looking for.
Yeah. Councillor Martin?
If I recall, we also amended the CIP in the last year for the Building Faster Fund to incentivize housing, and that was for citywide activity, not just in the downtown core as the CIP was originally designed for.
Oh,
Your worship, through Councillor Martin, hope it's the same answer you were going to give. That was certainly identified in the housing pledge, but it is not something that has been brought forward to council in the form of an actual program with guidelines and eligibilities, because we are still working through with the province for 2023 eligibility for building faster funds. We haven't been the recipient of such yet.
and yes, that is what I would say. Certainly, and I like the idea of us, we talked about it, Councillor Lauder, through the strategic plans about the possibility of making it citywide as well with a CIP program. So I like that idea and I'm looking forward to that report. Anyone else? And it is oh, sorry, Councillor Schanberg.
Again, not to repeat myself, but I just will look at sort of say, well, the County of Oxford has these things that they are required to do under their umbrella, and the city of Woodstock is there things to do under our umbrella. And if it came to building a new in-ground swimming pool, I don't think we get a check from the County of Oxford to help do that, or a hockey arena for that matter, or any other thing. For example, when we do our budget, we talked about budgets earlier today, the city of Woodstock has its own public library, but we don't pay into the county library system whatsoever because it's not our library system. And I think with things that are responsible for one area and responsible for the next area, I think they should be able to just sort of keep those definitions, or we're going to continue to gray matters as to what the county is supposed to be responsible for and what the city is responsible for.
Yes, again, I share those concerns. I haven't kept that secret. It's I guess the opportunities moving forward for councils to decide if we want to, and I think I like the idea of the CIP program myself, that we'll be able to vote on that and decide if that's where we want to put city funds or not, because again, the need is there. Though we'll continue to advocate and do more at county level, those of us that are on county council, because that is an area of responsibility of the county, there's no question. But I still think we can help with our, in certain ways. And if nobody else, I'll turn this over for recorded vote.
Councillor Leatherbarrow,
Yes.
Councillor Schattenberg,
No.
Councillor Wismer Van Meer,
Yes.
Mayor Accioni,
Yes,
Councillor Lauder,
No.
Councillor Martin,
Yes.
the motion carries.
okay, thank you. Nothing from clerks or the CIO's office or human resources, nothing from fire services, or public works or IT tonight. No special committee advisory task force reports, no notice of motions, and no new business that I'm familiar with, which brings us to the draft bylaws. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Schattenberg that the following bylaws be given a first and second reading. 9708-24-A, bylaw to provide for the sale of certain lands owned by the Corporation of the City of Woodstock to High Noon Investment Corporation. 9709-24, 24A, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended, ZN 8-24-12, 801 Walter Street, and 9710-24, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended, ZN 82411, 1510 Dundas Street.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns with those? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lauder that the following bylaws be given a third and final reading: 9708-24, 9709-24, and 9710-24.
Thank you. Last chance. Any questions or concerns? All those in favor? That is carried. And with that, we're going to start with Councillor Schanberg tonight.
Yeah, I have three events I'd like to mention. I'll go in order of the dates. This coming Sunday, September 22nd at 9 a.m., it's the TD, so that's the bank, TD Tree Days in Woodstock, along with the UTRCA. And they'll be planting 150 trees. So sometimes I've seen 500 or 600 trees, and Mayor Accioni's been out with me for tree planting in the past as well, but it's 150 trees this time because talking to Brad Hertner at the UTRCA, these are higher caliper or older trees that are getting planted, more established trees. At Burgess Park, in the playground area, which is at the sort of the end of Tamarack Boulevard in the city of Woodstock. And as usual, you dress appropriately for Sunday morning at 9 a.m. because this is always a rain or shine event. Bring a shovel if you've got one, but gloves and snacks and stuff will be provided. On Tuesday, September 24th at 6:30, the Oxford Historical Society has their September meeting. It's usually the last Tuesday of the month. And this time it's going to be at 360 Dundas Street, and the speaker is going to be Brenda Boswell. I think everyone in the community knows who Brenda Boswell is. And at the age of 12, she started working at a restaurant in the city of Woodstock, and that's where she's going to be the guest speaker at for the Historical Society on September 24th, that being Mel's Fish and Chips. So it'll be a very interesting meeting and the part of the history of downtown Dundas Street, but certainly very much the history of that establishment that's been around for a long, long time in Woodstock. Last event I want to mention is outside of the city, but very Woodstock related. Saturday, September 28th at 8 a.m. till noon, Reuse It Palooza at the Embro Community Center and Arena. That's something the Woodstock Environment Advisory Committee has participated in the past. Of course, you can donate your items and then, of course, pick up free items that you can use. Reuse It Paloozas on the 28th of September. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Alrighty, I made a note on a couple of things just quickly. So of course, Monday, September 30th is National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So ISON, the Indigenous Solidarity and Awareness Network in Oxford, will be hosting their 4th annual march, and that is in Ingersoll, starting at 6 p.m. Their information is on their social media pages, so I encourage folks to look at that. They also have a sunrise ceremony that they're going to be hosting over at Piddock. I tried to look up the information quick, but I couldn't find it here. My computer didn't want to open it. So look for their social media posts because those are two very interesting events that are taking place for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. The Oxford Attack are going to be hosting their pink ribbon game again on September 28th. That's at St. Mary's High School. Tickets, or admission, I should say, is $5, and that goes to the Canadian Cancer Society. And it is the McMaster team versus the Fanshawe women's basketball team, but something fun for the young ones. The under 11, U11 and U13 girls are also going to be having a quick scrimmage in the halftime. It was quite entertaining last year watching them because some of them was the first time, the U11s, a lot of times it's the first time that they've been playing organized basketball. So it's a little chaotic and quite enjoyable to watch. And when somebody gets a basket, you've never seen a building explode quite like that. Also, my son had to mention this to me today. He was quite excited when he walks from his school. He goes to Huron Park and walks to my office after school every day to go work out and play basketball at the Y after. But he's like, Mom, guess what? I was the first person to use that crosswalk. And I was like, the crosswalk. So there's a new crosswalk that folks will notice at Rathburn in Berkshire and Blandford. It's the road construction that's going in along Rathburn. It's not quite finished yet, but the crosswalk is there, and the folks that have been doing the work from, I believe it's ViewCon that's there, were applauding my son when he hit the button and yelled at the truck at him to let him know he was the first person to ever use it. So I'm not sure if he's trying to get some kind of shrine or something imposed there, but he wanted everyone to know. So yeah, have a wonderful evening, everyone.
work on getting him a plaque or something, right? Yeah. Counselor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Accioni. Two things that I wanted to mention that are coming up on Monday. The Oxford Community Foundation's annual golf tournament is on Monday. It'll be held out at Mount Elgin Golf Course, which I'm told is a beautiful course to play. It'll be my first time playing that course. I do happen to know of one space available if someone is looking to join in last minute. Should be a fun day, and of course, to support the Community Foundation that does great work in leaving legacies in our community. The second thing I want to mention is Monday evening is the biannual. Every other year, Oxford Connections, our economic development organizations, get together and host a FAM tour, which is short for familiarization tour. It is the opportunity for people who buy land, sell land, develop land, construct buildings, to get together and see what the opportunities are here in Woodstock and around the county, and network with each other. And a number of times deals have come together as a result of the FAM tour. So yeah, I'll be joining for a reception on Monday night to greet our visitors and see what deals we can put together in the future in our community.
Thank you. Counselor Leatherborough.
I hope everyone has a nice long weekend coming up.
Thank you. Yep. Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. Lots going on at the Art Gallery. The Art Gallery fall programs are now open for registration. Programs include after-school programs for elementary and high school students, start with art for parents and tots, along with several art instruction classes for adults. And visit the gallery's website, woodstockgallery.ca, for more details. And Saturday night is the Taste of Art, and outside, if you want to just come downtown, if you can't go to the Taste of Art event, the Ingersoll Pipe Band is going to be playing there for a while. So if you hear the pipe band, you'll know that's where it's coming from. And there is a new exhibition recently installed, and that's Betty MacArthur illustrating the artistic career she led. Betty is the mother of a well-known artist, Jackie Poole, wife of the late Councillor Poole. So it is a very nice selection of works that we own in our own gallery, and there's others that have donated or had pictures, paintings that they'd have so that they would be in that collection. So it's a great opportunity to see this. So thank you.
Thank you. Mentioned a couple of events from the last week. Of course, Terry Fox Run was very successful. I want to thank everybody for getting out. It's always nice to see that. 44 years running straight, over $850 million raised in Terry's name. I think that's something to, really that the work of one person can do so much good for something so bad, and it affects everybody's life. Everybody knows somebody, unfortunately, with cancer. Woodstock Navy Vets, of course. Last Friday night was one of the best games I've been to. They won 5-0, but the significance of that, of course, is there was 15.6 seconds left, and they scored the 5th goal to make it 5-0. But by coincidence, it was also Domino Pizza night, so everybody got a free pizza in the entire place. So I don't know, 1,500 plus people, and you have never heard a louder crowd than that. And I'm including the stair stepping, if anybody has been to those events. That was a great game, and hats off to Woodstock Navy Vets. They were trying for those 5 goals so hard. Of course, tonight was Take Back the Night. Walk from Museum Square. Unfortunately, we're going to miss the ending of it here, but I want to just share a stat of 1 in 3 women worldwide experience some form of sexual violence or intimate partner violence. So it's Take Back the Night is the longest running worldwide walk for any kind of awareness for that. So just want to recognize that. Tomorrow, there's a couple of anniversaries I'm going to be attending. First off, we got the 4-year anniversary of the Oxford County Community Health Center's mobile health bus, the outreach bus. So congratulations to that. It's unfortunate the need is there, but it certainly is. So really appreciate the organization, and they get out to see all those in the encampments on a regular basis. But also it's the 60th anniversary for the United Way. So quite excited for that. I want to say a big congratulations to United Way. There's thousands of different things over 60 years it's supported, and all the various agencies, I'm sure, will be in attendance tomorrow to celebrate. Tomorrow night, we have the Greg Morton Comedy Night. So hopefully we'll see some people there. That's in support of Crime Stoppers. So that should be fun. It was mentioned already, Saturday, the Taste of Art will certainly be there in the evening. And earlier in the day, I'll be at the Woodstock Special Olympics annual award presentation. So another busy weekend here on top of what everybody else has already mentioned. And please make sure you keep a copy of your What's on Woodstock magazine. Go to the city website. There's always so much going on here in the city of Woodstock. And with that, I'll look for an adjournment. Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Wismer Van Meer. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Have a great night, everyone.